penetrated on at least 2 occasions by unintentional strikes by depleted uranium ammunition during the Battle of Norfolk. Waco Siege, edit. During the Waco Siege in 1993, 2 M101 Abrams tanks were borrowed from the military and deployed by the FBI against the Branch Davidians. Upgrades, edit. The M102 was a further improvement of the M101, with a commander's independent thermal viewer, weapon station, position navigation equipment, and a full set of controls and displays linked by a digital data bus. These upgrades also provided the M102 with an improved fire control system. The M102 System Enhancement Package, SEP, added digital maps, Force XXI Battle Command Brigade and below, FBCB2, Linux communications system capabilities for commanders, and an improved cooling system to compensate for heat generated by the additional computer systems. The M102 SEP also serves as the basis for the M104 Wolverine Heavy Assault Bridge. The M102 SEP V2, version 2, added common remotely operated weapon station, CROWS or CROWS 2, support, color displays, better interfaces, a new operating system, better front and side armor, and an upgraded transmission for better durability. Further upgrades included depleted uranium armor for all variants, a system overhaul that returns all A1s to like new condition, M101 AIM, a digital enhancement package for the A1, M101D, and a commonality program to standardize parts between the U.S. Army and the Marine Corps, M101HC. Improvements to survivability, lethality, and protection have been sought since 2014. Iraq War, edit. Further combat was seen during 2003 when U.S. forces invaded Iraq and deposed Iraqi President Saddam Hussein in the Iraq War's Operation Iraqi Freedom. One achievement of the M101S was the destruction of 7 T-72s in a point-blank skirmish, less than 50 yards, 46 m, near Mahmoudieh, about 18 miles, 29 kilometers, south of Baghdad, with no U.S. losses. This was in the face of inadequately trained Iraqi tank crews, most of whom had not fired live ammunition in the previous year due to the sanctions then in operation and made no hits at point-blank range. Following lessons learned in Desert Storm, the Abrams and many other U.S. combat vehicles used in the conflict were fitted with combat identification panels to reduce friendly fire incidents. Several Abrams tanks that were irrecoverable due to loss of mobility or other circumstances were destroyed by friendly forces, usually by other Abrams tanks, to prevent their capture. Some Abrams tanks were disabled by Iraqi infantrymen in ambushes during the invasion. Some troops employed short-range anti-tank rockets and fired at the tracks, rear and top. Other tanks were put out of action by engine fires when flammable fuel stored externally in turret racks was hit by small arms fire and spilled into the engine compartment. By March 2005, approximately 80 Abrams tanks had been forced out of action by enemy attacks. 63 were shipped back to the U.S. for repairs, while 17 were damaged beyond repair, with 3 of them at the beginning of 2003. Vulnerabilities exposed during urban combat in the Iraq War were addressed with the Tank Urban Survival Kit, TUSK, modifications, including armor upgrades and a gun shield, issued to some M1 Abrams tanks. It added protection in the rear and side of the tank and improved fighting ability and survivability in urban environments. By December 2006, more than 530 Abrams tanks had been shipped back to the U.S. for repairs. In May 2008, it was reported that a U.S. M1 tank had also been damaged in Iraq by insurgent fire of a Soviet-made RPG-29 Vampir, which uses a tandem charge heat warhead to penetrate explosive reactive armor, ERA, as well as composite armor behind it. The US considered the RPG-29 a high threat to armor and refused to allow the newly formed Iraqi army to buy it, fearing that it would fall into the insurgents' hands. Iraqi Army Service, edit. Between 2010 and 2012 the US supplied 140 refurbished M101 Abrams tanks to Iraq. In mid-2014, they saw action when the Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant, ISIL or Islamic State, launched the June 2014 Northern Iraq Offensive. During 3 months, about one-third of the Iraqi army's M1 tanks had been damaged or destroyed by ISIL and some were captured by opposing forces. By December 2014, the Iraqi army only had about 40 operational Abrams left. That month, the U.S. Department of State approved the sale of another 175 Abrams to Iraq. Iranian-backed Iraqi Shiite Kataib Hezbollah brigades, were reported to operate M1 Abrams, and released publicity showing the tanks being transported by trucks to take part in the Battle of Mosul. It is not known whether the tanks were captured from ISIL, seized from Iraq's military, or handed over. One Iraqi-operated Abrams has been nicknamed the Beast after it became the lone working tank when taking back the town of Hit in April 2016, destroying enemy fighting positions and IED emplacements. In October 2017, Abrams were used by the Iraqi Security Forces and the Popular Mobilization Forces, also called al-Hashd al-Shabi, in assaults against the Kurdistan Regional Government Peshmerga in the town of Orchan Kupri, also called Pad. It was claimed by Kurdish commanders that at least one Abrams was destroyed by the Peshmerga. War in Afghanistan, edit. Canada and Denmark deployed Leopard 1 and 2 MBTs that were specially modified to operate in the relatively flat and arid conditions of southwestern Afghanistan. In late 2010, at the request of Regional Command Southwest, the U.S. Marine Corps deployed a small detachment of 14 M101 Abrams tanks from Delta Company, 1st Tank Battalion, 1st Marine Division, forward to southern Afghanistan in support of operations in Helmand and Kandahar provinces. 2015 Yemen Civil War, edit. Saudi Abrams tanks saw service in the 2015 Yemeni Civil War, where M102s were used against Houthi rebels. In August 2016, the U.S. approved a deal to sell up to 153 more Abrams tanks to Saudi Arabia, including 20 battle damage replacements, suggesting that some Saudi Arabian Abrams had been destroyed or severely damaged in combat in Yemen. Russo-Ukrainian War, edit. Russian invasion of Ukraine, edit. In January 2023, U.S. President Joe Biden said that the United States would send 31 M1 Abrams tanks to Ukraine. The plan to transfer the tanks to Ukraine was approved as part of a larger aid package. Pentagon spokesperson Sabrina Singh specified that the tanks would be the M102 variant, however, because they were not available in excess in U.S. stocks, they would be purchased through Ukraine Security Assistance Initiative, USAI, and could take up to 2 years to manufacture and deliver. In March 2023 the Pentagon announced that, in order to expedite delivery, older M101 variants would be pulled from Army stocks and refurbished for delivery by the fall. This change would also ensure deliveries to U.S. allies of new M102s would not be disrupted. In September 2023, Ukraine began receiving these tanks, which were former U.S. Marine Corps tanks. The tanks supplied were also older, having entered service in 1986, export versions with classified U.S. armor removed before the tanks were sent to Ukraine. This was to prevent or reduce any exploitation of technology found on any Abrams captured by Russian forces. The first pictures of the M101 in Ukrainian usage appeared online in November 2023, showing a M101 near Kupiansk. In February 2024, an M101 was reported as lost in Ukraine. The blowout panels on the ammo bins had been activated, indicating that the ammunition had cooked off. This M101 was destroyed by a FPV Piranha 10 quadcopter. As of August 2024, Ukraine had visually confirmed losses of 14, 6 destroyed and 8 damaged and abandoned, of the 31 Abrams tanks, including one that was captured by Russia and displayed as a war trophy in Moscow in May 2024. One more Abrams was damaged. In April 2024, Pentagon officials reported that Ukraine's Abrams had been withdrawn from frontline service. The Russian use of hunter-killer drones have made it too difficult to operate the tanks in the current battlefield with muddy ground hindering maneuverability. A Ukrainian company has unveiled a new set of anti-drone steel screens, which weighs 430 kilograms, approximately 948 pounds. Designed to protect the tank, while not hindering its function, the screens also use Soviet-era Contact 1 explosive reactive armor. The screens protect the turret's top, rear, sides and other vulnerable sections. It leaves opening for smoke grenade launchers, the commander's hatch and other parts of the tank. Some 7 sets of armor have been produced, according to the company, for the Ukrainian Abrams. Proposed production shutdown, edit. Serial production of the M1 Abrams for the U.S. Army ended in 1995, though production for exports continued until 2000. The U.S. Army planned to end operations at Joint Systems Manufacturing Center, formerly Lima Army Tank Plant, from 2013 to 2016 to save over $1 billion. It would be restarted in 2017 to upgrade existing tanks. General Dynamics Land Systems, GDLS, which operates the factory, opposed the move, arguing that suspension of operations would increase long-term costs and reduce flexibility. Specifically, GDLS estimated that closing the plant would cost $380 million and restarting production would cost $1.3 billion. By August 2013, Congress had allocated $181 million for buying parts and upgrading Abrams systems to mitigate industrial base risks and sustain development and production capability. Congress and General Dynamics were criticized for redirecting money to keep production lines open and accused of forcing the Army to buy tanks it didn't need. General Dynamics asserted that a 4-year shutdown would cost $1.11.6 billion to reopen the line, depending on the length of the shutdown, whether machinery would be kept operating, and whether the plant's components would be completely removed. They contended that the move was to upgrade Army National Guard units to expand a pure fleet and maintain production of identified irreplaceable subcomponents. A prolonged shutdown could cause their makers to lose their ability to produce them, and foreign tank sales were not guaranteed to keep production lines open. There is still a risk of production gaps even with production extended through 2015. With funds awarded before recapitalization is needed, budgetary pressures may push planned new upgrades for the Abrams from 2017 to 2019. In December 2014, Congress again allocated $120 million, against the wishes of the Army, for Abrams upgrades. In late 2016, tank production and refurbishment had fallen to a rate of 1 per month with fewer than 100 workers on site. In 2017, the Trump administration ordered military production to increase, including Abrams production and employment. In 2018, it was reported that the Army had ordered 135 tanks rebuilt to new standards, with employment at over 500 workers and expected to rise to 1,000. The Marine Corps pursued a force restructuring plan named Force Design 2030. Under this program, all U.S. Marine tank battalions were deactivated and their M101 tanks transferred to the Army by the end of 2021. Future plans, edit. During the 1980s and 1990s, the Block 3 main battle tank from the Armored Systems Modernization (ASM) program was expected to succeed the M1 Abrams family in the 1990s. The design had an unmanned turret with a 140mm main gun, as well as improved protection. The end of Cold War hostilities caused the end of the program. The tracked M8 armored gun system was conceived as a possible supplement for the Abrams in U.S. service for low-intensity conflict in the early 1990s. Prototypes were made but the program was cancelled. The 8-wheeled M1128 mobile gun system was designed to supplement the Abrams in U.S. service for low-intensity conflicts. It has been introduced into service and serves with Stryker brigades. The Future Combat Systems XM1202 mounted combat system was to replace the Abrams in U.S. Army service and was in development when funding for the program was cancelled in 2010. Engineering Change Proposal 1 is a two-part upgrade process. ECP-1 adds space, weight, and power improvements and active protection against improvised explosive devices. 9 ECP-1A prototypes have been produced as of October 2014. ECP-1B, which would begin development in 2015, may include sensor upgrades and converging several tank round capabilities into a multi-purpose round. As of 2021, the Army anticipated that the remaining M1A2 to beyond 2050. As of 2021, the Army will begin divesting its M1A1SA variants in fiscal year 2025. As of 2021, the U.S. Army was evaluating a replacement for the M1 Abrams as part of the Next Generation Combat Vehicle (NGCV) program, notionally known as the Decisive Lethality Platform (DLP). In September 2023, the U.S. Army announced that it had cancelled the planned M1A2 SEPV4 variant and would instead redirect resources into a new variant of the Abrams tank, named M1E3. Design, edit. Countermeasures, edit. Camouflage, edit. Further information, military camouflage. Some XM1 FSED pilot vehicles and XM1 RIP tanks were painted with the Mobility Equipment Research and Design Command, (MRDC), four-color paint scheme. Factory-applied forest green paint gave way to Europe 1, a three-color pattern, in 1983 at the same time as chemical agent-resistant coating, CARC, was adopted. Europe 1 consisted of green 383, brown 383, and black colors. U.S. Army Abrams deployed to the Iraq War were painted CARC Tan 686. Due to the increasing significance of American operations in Europe, the U.S. Army transitioned most of its vehicles to CARC Green 383 starting around 2017. M1A1S came from the factory with the NATO 3-color camouflage black /mid green /dark brown CARC paint jobs. Today, M1A1S are given the NATO 3-color paint job during rebuilds. M1S and M101S deployed to Operation Desert Storm were hastily painted desert tan. Some, but not all, of these tanks were repainted to their authorized paint scheme. M1A2S built for Middle Eastern countries were painted in desert tan. Replacement parts, rotor wheels, armor skirt panels, drive sprockets, etc., are painted olive green, which can sometimes lead to vehicles with a patchwork of green and desert tan parts. Australian M101S are camouflaged in Orscom, a scheme that consists of black, olive drab, and brown. Concealment, edit. The turret is fitted with two 6-barreled M250 smoke grenade launchers. USMC M101S used an 8-barreled version, with one on each side. When deployed, the grenades airburst, creating a thick smoke that blocks both visual and thermal imaging. The engine is also equipped with a vehicle engine exhaust smoke system, VESS, that is triggered by the driver. When activated, fuel is sprayed into the hot turbine exhaust, creating thick smoke. This system was discontinued by the U.S. Army after it switched to JP-8 jet fuel in the 1990s due to the risk of fire. Armor, edit. Further information, Cavorm armor. In addition to conventional rolled homogeneous armor, RHA, the Abrams uses a secret British-developed composite armor called Cavorm. The M1 Abrams composite armor, referred to as special armor by the U.S. Army, is most substantial at the front of the hull, where it is 2 feet, 0.61 m, at its thickest. The front of the hull is the only part of the hull armored with composites other than the side skirts of the frontal half of the hull. The Abrams turret features composite armor across both the front and the sides. The armor is much thicker on the Abrams than on previous tanks. This is not a reflection of any weakness of Cavorm armor. Pound for pound, Cavorm is better at stopping shaped charges and kinetic projectiles. Rather, unlike RHA, Cavorm is optimized against shaped charge projectiles. Effective shaped charges, particularly anti-tank guided missiles, were a relatively new battlefield innovation. Lacking a breakthrough advance in novel armor material to negate shaped charges, previous tank designers had simply not found it practical to add the amount of RHA required to defeat shaped charges. While the exact composition of the Abrams composite armor remains a state secret, a generalization about how it works can be gleaned from what has been publicly said about it. It consists of ceramic blocks set in resin between layers of conventional armor. The ceramic acts as a non-explosive reactive armor, NRA, disrupting shaped charges. The NRA plates shatter on impact with the projectile, disrupting the penetrating jets of shaped charges, or in the case of kinetic rounds eroding the projectile. For the M1 Abrams base model, military historian Stephen Zalagar estimates the frontal armor at 350 mm vs APFS and 700 mm vs heat warhead in the book, M1 Abrams Main Battle Tank 1982-1992, 1993. In M1 Abrams vs T-72 Ural, 2009, he uses Soviet estimates of 470 mm, 19 in, vs APFS and 650 mm, 26 in, vs heat for the base model Abrams. He also gives the Soviet estimates for the M1A1, 600 mm, 24 in, vs APFS, and 700 mm, 28 in, vs heat. Armor protection against kinetic energy rounds was improved by implementing a new special armor incorporating depleted uranium, DU. This was introduced into the M1A1 production starting October 1988. But at the expense of adding considerable weight to the tank, as depleted uranium is 1.7 times denser than lead. The DU is applied to the backing plate of the turret armor arrays. The first M101 tanks to receive this upgrade were tanks stationed in Germany. US-based tank battalions participating in Operation Desert Storm received an emergency program to upgrade their tanks with depleted uranium armor immediately before the onset of the campaign. M102 tanks uniformly incorporate depleted uranium armor, and all M101 tanks in active service have been upgraded to this standard as well. This variant was designated as the M101 half or heavy armor. The M101 AIM, M102 SEP and all subsequent Abrams models feature depleted uranium. Each Abrams variant after the M101 have been equipped with depleted uranium armor of different generations. The M101 uses first-generation armor, while the M102 and M101HC use second-generation depleted uranium. The M102 SEP variants have been equipped with third-generation depleted uranium armor combined with a graphite coating. DU armor is ordinarily only applied to the turret cheeks and sights, where it acts as the backing plate for composite armor, though at least 5 M1 Abrams with DU hulls were produced and were displayed at U.S. Army armor schools as of 2006. For the M101 Zalagar gives a frontal armor estimate of 600 mm, 24 in, vs UPFS and 1300 mm, 51 in, vs heat in M1 Abrams main battle tank 1982-1992, nearly double the original protection of the Abrams. In M1 Abrams vs T-72 Ural, he uses different estimates of 600 mm, 24 in, vs UPFS and 700 mm, 28 in, vs heat for the front hull and 800 mm, 31 in, vs UPFS and 1300 mm, 51 in, vs heat for the front of the turret. The protection of M102 SEP is a frontal turret armor estimate of 940-960 mm, 37-38 in, vs UPFS and 1,321,620 mm, 52-64 in, vs heat. Glacis estimate of 565-90 mm, 22-23 in, vs UPFS and 510-1,050 mm, 2041 in, vs heat, and lower front hull estimate of 586-50 mm, 23-26 in, vs UPFS and 809-70 mm, 31-38 in, vs heat. The M102 SEPV3 increased the lost thickness of the turret and hull front armor. Total armor protection from this increase is not known. In 1998, a program was begun to incorporate improved turret side armor into the M102. This was intended to offer better protection against rocket-propelled grenades that were more modern than the baseline RPG-7. These kits were installed on about 325 older M102 tanks in 2001-2009 and were also included in upgraded tanks. The Abrams may also be fitted with explosive reactive armor over the track skirts if needed, such as the Tank Urban Survival Kit, and slat armor over the rear of the tank and rear fuel cells to protect against ATGMs. The 105mm M1 Abrams does not use spall liners, though 3 105mm rounds on the turret basket floor are covered with spall protection covers on the M1 tank variant. Damage control, edit. The tank has a Halen firefighting system to automatically extinguish fires in the crew compartment. The engine compartment has a firefighting system that is engaged by pulling a T-handle located on the left side of the hull. The Halen gas can be dangerous to the crew. However, the toxicity of Halen 1301 gas at 7% concentration is much lower than the combustion products produced by fire in the crew compartment, and CO2 dump would be lethal to the crew. The crew compartment also contains small handheld fire extinguishers. Fuel and ammunition are stored in armored compartments with blowout panels intended to protect the crew from the risk of the tank's own ammunition cooking off, exploding, if the tank is damaged. The main gun's ammunition is stored in the rear section of the turret, with blast doors that open under power by sliding sideways only to remove a round for firing, then automatically close. Doctrine mandates that the ammunition door must be closed before arming the main gun. NBC Protection, edit.